Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We have breaking news. The New York tri-state area just experienced a 4.8 earthquake coming out of western New Jersey, about 50 miles outside of New York City. Our senior investigative reporter, Aaron Katersky, joins me now. Aaron, we actually felt this in the studio while on the air. What are you learning about this? It
was a 4.8 magnitude earthquake that was centered, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, in New Jersey, about 50 miles west of New York City. But it was felt all over the tri-state, several seconds of sustained shaking. There's no immediate word of potential impacts, but right now damage assessments are being done here in New York City by the police and fire departments. Con Edison, which is the provider of electricity for much of New York City, is also checking to see whether there are any reports of power outages. And a moment ago, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, issued a statement on social media saying that her teams are also checking. So we're still waiting to find out the severity of impact, but millions of people certainly felt this all over the tri-state area.
Aaron, is there any sense of how equipped this area is for earthquakes?
Well, it's not like Southern California, that's for sure.
Right.
That there's a lot of things that are built to certain codes here. Earthquakes generally are not one of them, but skyscrapers, as you see on your screen now in Manhattan, are built to withstand quite a lot. 4.8, thankfully, is not as strong as certainly it could be, but nonetheless, teams are checking because there are a lot of older structures, especially in and around New York City, that could potentially be impacted.
So, Aaron, what happens after an event like this? You know, thankfully, as far as we know so far, nothing catastrophic here. But does a quake like this make the city and the tri-state area maybe revisit some of those codes?
I'm not sure it does, but it certainly is getting a lot of people talking. You know, we've had a lot of messages from friends and relatives, from coworkers, saying I felt it here, there, and everywhere. So I think it will be something that people talk about on their Friday mid-morning here. But I'm not sure earthquake codes are necessarily the same priority as they are in other parts of the country and the world. Although the same principles do seem to apply because of the impact of hurricanes and flooding and the other kinds of natural events that the area sustains.
This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. If you haven't heard yet, New York, New Jersey, the East Coast was hit with an earthquake, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake, which is pretty big for the East Coast, a lot bigger than any type of earthquake on the East Coast that this generation has ever experienced. And going back to 1737, 1884, where the largest ones noted were 5.2 earthquakes. So this is a 4.8, which is very, very large for the East Coast. So obviously a lot of people have commented on the channel. A lot of people have commented on the website about the earthquake. And of course, I want to cover this topic because it's important. Because if you look at a lot of the maps, which we have seen in studying what the New World Order blueprint is for America, a lot of the coasts are put underwater. Now, let's start here with the 4.8 magnitude earthquake, which was felt in Delaware, New Jersey, New York, PA. And of course, they don't want you to be suspicious of these types of earthquakes, which normally never happen. They want you to be conditioned into thinking this is the new norm. Of course, this is because they're going to cloak this under the guise of climate agenda, climate change, climate crisis. And this is to normalize these events and these things that they're doing with weaponized weather manipulation that they have the power to create. Now, I've talked about HAARP. Coincidentally, of course, CERN has just been turned back on. But there's a lot of programming out there in regards to the East Coast being underwater, specifically New York being put underwater. And of course, that would start with an earthquake that would result in a tsunami. So we have to look at this and wonder if there's a potential test run being done here. There was an earthquake about 3 months ago in New York that registered close to a 2.0, which they made a big deal about. This one registering on now all the way up to a 4.8. It almost seems like there's some conditioning going on here where we could expect an earthquake to hit the East Coast. And of course, we can fully expect it because they've shown us predictive programming many times. How many movies have you seen where they've shown us New York City underwater? Why is it that PBS, which is state-run media, has told us back in 2012 about what cities are going to be put underwater by the year 2020, by the year 2030? And of course, they mapped out the entire East Coast conveniently being put underwater. Other maps that we've all seen have shown the East Coast put underwater. Now that They have planted this into people's brains that weather, of course, is all organic. You can't control Mother Nature. While we know they have the weapons to do this type of thing, they are obviously pushing the climate agenda very, very hard, which tells us that they're going to blame all of this stuff on the climate crisis as they continue to use direct energy weapons, Tesla's earthquake machine, and many other things to put coasts potentially underwater. So what we should look at with this earthquake in New York is the preparing for potentially a tsunami to hit the East Coast, because that's what the plan has been for a long period of time. I'll take you back now to the day after tomorrow, where, of course, this movie was filled with a lot of the climate predictive programming that we've seen over the years, and this is one of many movies which has shown New York City underwater. Okay, and again, earthquakes are needed to begin these types of tsunamis that would be able to put cities that are on the coast underwater. New York specifically is one that we've seen the predictive programming revolve around. Now, earthquakes in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware are not a normal thing. But the more you hear these stories about it, the more it becomes normalized, the more people become desensitized to it and think that it's just commonplace for earthquakes to suddenly appear on the East Coast. And again, another thing people need to start realizing is that earthquakes are man-made. The majority of earthquakes that we see in today's world are man-made. Even the Weather Channel has released things about earthquakes in the past, but this all goes back to Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine. Okay, and conveniently, coincidentally, I should say, Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine was run and tested in New York City, in downtown New York City, and this is something they don't want you to know about, but it's out there. Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine, his patents on man-made earthquakes, but the common person out there will think that we're all conspiracy nut jobs, even though we could see that the government has gone rogue. The government is long past turning on civilians, no matter what your political affiliation is. And these are the types of weapons that they're going to continue to use on the public because they know they can get away with it and blame it on the climate. Look.
A fabled earthquake machine has also been linked to the enigmatic inventor Nikola Tesla. Some accounts say Tesla built a steam-powered oscillator which was designed to vibrate at various frequencies. The machine reportedly caused violent vibrations in a New York building, causing panic among people in the area who thought it was an earthquake. Tesla wanted to use the machine to transmit electricity via vibrations in the ground. The genius inventor believed that a powerful enough machine could even cause earthquakes. However, the idea did not progress beyond the prototype stage.
One sunny afternoon, Nikola Tesla was in his Houston Street laboratory in Manhattan. He was experimenting with oscillators, which are electronic devices used to emit sound waves and even vibrations. He attached the little device to a support beam in his lab that ran the length of the building. He switched it on and started to gradually adjust the frequency it was emitting until, bingo, the beam started to vibrate. He had found the resonant frequency of the column. The test was proving to be a success. He started to feel a vibration in the floor as the sound wave traveled down the length of the beam and spread under his feet. He increased the intensity on the knob. It was just a quiver, but his downstairs neighbor began to notice his ceiling shaking. The other neighbors thought it was a heavy truck banging down the street, but the shaking persisted and grew stronger and stronger. The vibrations spread across the entire floor of the laboratory and into the neighboring buildings. Some of the locals in Little Italy and Chinatown began spilling onto the streets, thinking an earthquake was happening. The trembling was incessant and horrific, causing windows to shatter, pipes to stretch. The local police on Mulberry Street, they felt it too. An earthquake in New York City? Impossible. The police station was right around the corner from Tesla's lab, and they were all too familiar with the strange lights and sounds which would happen throughout the day and night from that building. As the ground shook, furniture was moving, pipes were breaking, and the officers thought the police headquarters was about to collapse. 2 police rushed out the door toward Tessa's lab. They reached his building. The vibrations felt even stronger there. They ran up the stairwell, facing the fear that the building might collapse on them. As they burst through the door to Tesla's lab, they were met with a bizarre sight. Tesla, swinging a heavy sledgehammer at one of the iron beams, he smashed the little device off, and the vibrations instantly stopped. No more earthquake. Tesla was surprised to see the 2 uniformed police officers just staring at him in shock. He approached them with the sledgehammer still in his hands and said, "Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but you are just a trifle too late to witness my experiment. I found it necessary to stop it suddenly and unexpectedly in an unusual manner, just as you entered. If you will come around this evening, I will have another oscillator attached to this platform, and each of you can stand on it. You will, I am sure, find it a most interesting and pleasurable experience. Now, you must leave, for I have many things to do. Good day, gentlemen." Apparently, Tesla was completely oblivious to the near destruction he had caused in the neighboring buildings and the neighborhood. The police were, I'm sure, as dumbfounded as the rest of the neighborhood. Everyone at that time knew who Tesla was. He was routinely in the New York papers. You can actually look up the digitized papers from early 1900s New York City and find dozens and dozens of newspaper articles interviewing Tesla about lightning or electricity or reporting on his new experiments. He was an odd but welcome fixture of the modern industrial age.
So many countries have been under weaponized weather attack. We've seen a lot of direct energy weapon attacks that they're blaming on wildfires, but we could all clearly see their direct energy weapon hits. We've seen a lot of devastating earthquakes. Of course, the one that I covered over in Turkey was one that got another YouTuber that I know of who sounds a lot like me wiped off the internet for showing the mysterious things forming in the ionosphere, things that were shot up into the sky right before this earthquake devastated Turkey. It never even gets media press over in the United States of America, the amount of people that died in that earthquake. It is astounding. It was reported that 53,500 people died in that earthquake in Turkey. That is a massive amount of people to get that minimal amount of coverage. And of course, what happened, just like in Maui, just like in Texas, is a lot of people saw some of the weird things going on with the weather. They saw the military lined up on the coasts. And all of a sudden, these earthquakes hit, and a lot of people were suspicious of these earthquakes. And of course, at the time, I was talking a lot about NATO and Turkey's refusal of NATO and a lot of the things that were going on a world stage that Turkey didn't want to be involved in. And of course, they warned Turkey that if they didn't do as they were told, that they would have consequences. And then, of course, a natural catastrophe occurred. Natural catastrophe that, of course, forced the leadership in Turkey to comply with NATO after the fact. And it only cost them about 53,500 lives, tragically, which, again, is absolutely just terrifying. The things that they're doing are terrifying. We're seeing more tsunamis, more earthquakes. How about the tornadoes that we're seeing all over the place? Tornadoes showing up, just ravishing through Kentucky, right? We've had 15, 20 tornadoes all at once hitting. These super hyper, they're calling hyper tornadoes. They're really just weaponized weather tornadoes that they're using. They're using this stuff all over the place. The weather has been out of control. And that is why they've put this boogeyman in place of the climate agenda. All this stuff is just going to get blamed mysteriously on the climate agenda. And then ultimately, who is to blame for the climate problem? You and me are. So on top of all the stuff they're doing with destroying land, destroying coast, they're hurting people. On top of that, climate laws are going to be in place, which are all going to be laws that keep us enslaved in our prison cells, which will be our homes, which eventually will be little camps and cubicles that they shove us inside of. So the story out there about the earthquake on the East Coast, residents across New Jersey, New York, Delaware reported feeling shaking as an earthquake rocked the region Friday. The U.S. Geological Survey confirmed a magnitude 4.8 earthquake occurred near Lebanon, New Jersey. New York City sustained no major impacts from the earthquake, though it was widely felt across the city. And again, northern New Jersey, an earthquake up in northern New Jersey off of the coast would be enough to start a major one, would be enough to start a tsunami. Now, this isn't a large enough one, 4.8, to start a tsunami, but you know that they do these things beforehand to test out and see what they can get in motion. First, they condition people with, oh, earthquakes are all of a sudden normal on the East Coast. Weather that we've never seen before is all of a sudden normal because you see it over and over and over again. It's the new norm, they tell you. Then, of course, they get stronger and stronger and stronger as they turn this thing up and up and up to see the size of the waves that they're going to cause from doing this, from manipulating this, right? How large of waves can they build up? Suddenly, when we see earthquakes below or near the ocean floor, we get larger and larger quakes, and we get larger and larger chances of tsunamis actually hitting. And again, the predictive programming is in place with that. So the other part of the story is the FDNY and the NYPD both said there were no immediate reports of damage, but both agencies are monitoring the situation. The MTA reported just before 11 a.m. there was no damage or service disruption in New York. Con Edison said they have no reports of outages. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said the epicenter was in Hunterdon County and the State Emergency Operations Center has been activated. The governor asked residents not to call 911 unless they have an actual emergency. So what does this do? Everybody ran to social media. Everybody posted about it. Regular people who follow my channel posted on the website, posted here about it because it's not normal. So people out there are suspicious of it, but the more they do it, the more normal it becomes, the less suspicious you become. And the next time it happens, you just start to ignore it and accept it as everyday life. Instead of researching and realizing that the government has the ability to do these things, the government has shown us that they're no longer working for us, they're working against us. And they have the ability, and they've shown us they have the ability to create this type of weaponized weather for a long period of time. You can look at HAARP, you can look at Tesla's earthquake machine, you can look at CERN. They have the ability to do this. So then you have to look at it and say, well, if they have the ability to do it, if people like JFK have talked about weaponized weather for over 70 years out in the open, okay, then you have to say to yourself, does it look like these people in power, whether you're a Democrat and you hate Trump or you're a Republican and you hate the Democrats, does it look like these people in power actually care about you? Does it not look like, if you look at the opposite political party, it's easy for people to believe a story like this. If Trump was a power, they believe it. All it would take is the mainstream media covering it, which of course would never happen. But people out there would then believe it. They'd be like, oh, Trump took this type of technology, they're using it on us because he's a psychopath. Okay, well, why not just believe that all the people in power are all psychopaths and they all do not have our best interests in mind? In fact, silent weapons for quiet wars is what they're going to use moving forward. And they're conditioning you into believing in the climate agenda so they can get away with this. So keep an eye on these stories where we see weather that is not normal weather occurring in places it normally doesn't occur. Tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes. Think about the repetition with the hurricanes. Month after month after month, we have these massive hurricanes hitting Florida, and it's become so normal now. Nobody goes, wait a minute, we never used to get hurricanes like this over and over and over. It'd be one big one once in a while. So why so much so? Oh, climate change. Oh, okay, so now we're supposed to automatically believe it, right? Of course, because that's how mind control works. They condition you into accepting it, and then it's problem, reaction, solution. They're the ones who are going to come in with the solution, the carbon footprint. They'll tell you after they do all the destruction they want to do that the carbon footprint will prevent these storms from occurring in the future. It'll help the climate initiative out. It'll help lower carbon emissions. Thus, if we stay inside and all this stuff, then there won't be any more weather. It's their way of saying, look, imprison yourself where we tell you to imprison yourself. Leave the states we want you to leave. Go to where we want you to go. Then stay locked up inside, and we won't drown you to death with a tsunami or hit you with an earthquake or throw you and your family into a tornado. That's what it is. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.